Hey guys.
We're on
Hi,
Facebook, we're on Instagram.
Okay,
Hi, everybody.
awesome. Yeah, so we're here for another episode of the Epic Hour. I'm gonna see if we have a few people on, and
Nice.
Yeah, we'll wait for a few more to come on. But today's an interesting episode. So we're actually filming at what was my primary residence, and yeah,
My phone, can you grab it in English? I need to put it on silent. Sorry, my phone's not on silent.
so yeah, so we are excited to have you guys on here, but as always, we want you to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and our team's here, and they will let us know what the question is or comment, and yeah, go from there.
It's true.
So I'm totally lost in days, but it was last Friday that I officially sold this house that we're in. And so some people might say, well, if you sold your house, how are you still in it? Yeah, and that's where the beauty of having our business comes in. So I'll go into the backstory of kind of my financial picture and what my foray through real estate has been, because maybe some of you guys can relate to it. Maybe some of you guys can have similar takeaways, or maybe you can learn from some of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way, and whatever that makes sense or however that fits into your world. But essentially, we sold this property that has 2 suites in it to a hassle-free landlord owner. And so I can smoothly transition into the new place I'm going to be living, which is pretty interesting and something that not a lot of people have the luxury of doing. So I have half my stuff moved out. We are actually turning this house into an Airbnb. And so 2 suites, it'll be really good. It's a decent location that is kind of central, and it's going to be a price point that I think it's going to be full all the time. And so we just looked at the analytics and said, hey, what does this make sense? But for me, why I wanted to sell my primary residence is I actually had quite a bit of equity tied up in here. And I don't know, for those of you who have pay attention to what is coming down the pipeline with rules and regulations, but the Canadian government is actually trying to file a motion or a bill where anybody who sells a primary residence would actually have to pay capital gains on any of the gains that they make in their property. So what does this mean? Anybody who has equity in your property, and I know there's a lot of people, especially in BC and in Ontario, your guys' house prices have gone up so much. And if you have not tapped into home equity line of credits, or if you have not accessed that equity and been able to put that to work somehow, and you're just sitting with the equity in your home, what that means if they pass this bill or this law is that you would have to pay capital gains just like you would on selling a rental property or revenue property. And you basically have to pay on 50% of the gain, the taxes, right? And so for me, I don't know if they're going to pass this or not. Again, my put on it, or my intake or my thoughts on it is that they're going to have to come up with this CERB money somehow, right? They just paid for, I don't know how much of the population was sitting at home throughout this whole COVID thing. Well, 4 million. No big deal, right? Trudeau can handle that. Yeah. They have to get the money somewhere. And so at the end of the day, they're going to try and tax all these different things that they have not taxed. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to leave this to what if. I'm an action taker. And I was like, you know what? I'm out. I don't want to have a primary residence because, again, I couldn't tap into the equity because I don't make a true income. Alyssa and I, we've always said, we take very little from the company, which means that we don't make a lot of money on paper. Therefore, we don't qualify for traditional financing. So again, we always go back to, we want to be able to help everybody customize your financial blueprint to make sense for where you're at. This is just what made sense for where we're at.
Well, and it made sense because when we were training and going through all our courses, all or a majority of our mentors and coaches said, for wealthy people, it's all about controlling everything and owning nothing. Yeah. And that is literally, you hear all these things about, well, I saw in the paper that this billionaire, this really rich person, they hardly paid any taxes. And that's because they pay it in a different form. When you're taxed based on being a business, the amounts you pay, those kinds of things, the brackets are completely different. That's why when you're like, somebody's a billionaire and they only paid this much tax, it's because they were everything they have was taxed as a business, right? And here's the cool thing. Instead of attacking the people that do that, you should be going, I should learn how to do that myself. Honestly, it's not hard for anyone who owns or buys into, for example, an MLM. People are like all the time, why does anybody want to sell stuff? And, besides liking the products, hey, guess what? You're running your own business. Guess what's a write-off? Your office in your home, potentially, your computer, your cell phone, the vehicle you're using. Hello, right? This is open to anyone. It just takes you the time to get out and learn to do it. So instead of sitting there complaining or bitching about the people doing it, why don't you just join that group and learn how?
Exactly. So that's what we've done. We've figured out that people are doing things differently, and we wanted to be those people who were doing things differently. And so that's why we educate and mentor under other people who are doing it, because we were like, hey, they're doing something right here.
Yeah.
So let's be like them. And that's really what it came down to. So for me, that's why I made the decision to do that. And so as of last Friday, I got a really big check where I got my equity out of my property, which is awesome. And then now I'm kind of regrouping, paid off all my debt. And what's interesting, and I'll go into the backstory of, again, my journey through real estate, but it was put me in the same position we were in actually when I met Alyssa, where I was technically debt free. No, technically debt free at that time. But we leveraged what we could to invest in E.P.I.C Alliance, and then we could build it to what it is. And again, would I change anything? No, 100% not. It's amazing what we've done. But at the same time, it's just sometimes, you go through life and it feels like you're going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But sometimes that 1 step back needs to happen to push you 3 steps forward, right? So if you're doing it strategically, that really makes sense. It's just a matter of making sure that you know what you're working for. Mm-hmm. And making sure you stay on track. And I always tell people this, it's that short-term pain for the long-term gain. And, some people don't have it. Some people get really, they think they're really motivated and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm doing this. And they're really great when the ride up is smooth. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden they hit a bump and then it's not so cool anymore. Right? And is it better to just go work my 9 to 5? It was really comfy there. I had a paycheck, all those things. You have to make those decisions. For Alyssa and myself, it was always 110% in, and we knew there was no looking back. So that's the way we've done it.
Yeah. I want a jet, and I couldn't do that working a 9 to 5.
Yeah. So if I deep dive into, do we have any questions or anything? No. So if I deep dive into my backstory, so I was 20 when I actually bought my first home. So back then, Saskatoon was this little anomaly, right? We were this city in the prairies where houses were really affordable.
Like 1950s affordable.
Yeah. And because I grew up here, you don't know what you don't know. And for myself, I just knew that I lived in Saskatoon. These were the house of, oh my God, I can't even speak today. Price of housing. Thank you. And I was just like, okay, well, if I want to get a house, I'll figure it out. So I was working at a bank at that point in time because, again, I had taken my high schooling. I do not like school, but my mom and I compromised, and I signed up for a 2-year business management diploma instead of the 4-year commerce program she wanted me to take. Did the 2-year program. Then I ended up getting a job at a bank. And so from there, I worked a few different positions and whatnot, but I happened to be a teller at a bank. And so background on me, for those who don't know, my mom is an educator. My dad was a drywaller. He died when I was 11. And so at the end of the day, working class family, and my parents were very hard workers. And so for me, that was where I get my hard work ethic. And, some people don't have that. Some people do. And for me, I've just always loved making money, and I've always been willing to work for it. And so I had a little bit of savings, but my mom, again, I always believe our parents do the best they can with what they have. And my mom didn't have financial support when she was younger. And so she had said, she did this for my sister and myself. She gave us a 5% down payment to buy our first houses, which is amazing. And, super blessed that she gave us that thing to get us forward. And then she also co-signed for our first property. So again, some people don't have that. Some people don't have people in their world who can co-sign mortgages for them. Some people don't have any sort of gifting funds to get them started. Again, you can bitch about what you don't have, or you can be thankful for what you have. I also know some people who literally have people who, their family members just buy them a house or do other things. And I just was thankful for what my mom was able to gift me with. And in her mind, she said that she would rather use part of our inheritance while she's still alive to help us further our lives as we were heading into adulthood, which again, I think is really brilliant because, you know, it's great to have all the savings, but exactly that. Would you rather help your children get ahead now in life when you can? Again, putting money into an asset, it's not really going to be something I can go and just like waste the money on, right? So,
and it doesn't even just have to be buying a house. Like, I'll use my son as an example. I bought a life insurance policy on him when he was born. And then what I'm paying into that, when he turns 21, what he'll be able to do with that and build out, that's just another arm of way of being able to invest. It was funny how many people like attacked me because I bought life insurance for my baby. And I was like, well, things happen. I hate to admit it, but sometimes life doesn't go as we like try to draw the dots, and it sucks. But honestly, I couldn't fathom what it would be like to lose a child, but then on top of it, have to deal with the financials of that loss. Just would amplify it that much more. So why would I ask for that? So yeah, so that was something I've done. So, you know, maybe you're not in a position to, you know, put a down payment on your child's house, but then get a small life insurance policy that they can turn into something through, like, you can educate on the different forms of life insurance and all those things.
Yeah. And I think some people might not understand all the different policies you can get.
No.
Some policies only pay out when somebody passes, but other ones actually turn into a savings plan.
That's right.
Right. And so that's what Alyssa's referring to. Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. It's like figuring out where you're at and what your capacities are. So in my instance, that's what it was. Ironically, the property I ended up identifying and deciding to buy was a 5-bedroom house, 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on the river in Saskatchewan, in Saskatoon. Pardon. So what's funny about this is living on the riverbank is pretty desirable, but because this was a west side property, nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to live there because it was a little bit in the hood and whatever. And again, I'm West Side girl through and through. I grew up in the King George neighborhood, and this house was in the Riversdale neighborhood. So for me, I wasn't fazed by it. What was really fun though is that the listing was listed at $130,000. And when I went to see what I could get pre-approved for with this gifted $5,000 down payment and my credit and the numbers, I qualified for $100,000 purchase price. That was far off from the $130,000. So it was just interesting timing because I had not bought a house before. I'm 20, right? My mom had only bought the house that we lived in 20 years before then. And so you don't know what you don't know, right? So how do you figure stuff out if you don't know? So for me, again, I'm very much an action taker. So I was like, I need a realtor to go look at this house. So I literally saw an open house that weekend, went to look at a house, and I was like, hey, I'm not interested in this house, but I need a realtor to show me another house. So could you be my realtor? And the lady's like, yeah. I was like, okay, great, thanks. So literally we booked in that next day. I went to look at this house and I'm like, it's super cute. And I was like, there's way too many bedrooms. So I'll just get roommates to pay me to live in the house because I work 80 hours a week. So I'm never there anyway. Sounded really great. The problem was, again, I only qualified for $100,000 purchase price. It was listed for $130,000. So I explained this to the agent. I said, I'm not trying to be a dick. I just only have this amount of qualification and I can't get any more funds. And so she's like, well, let's just write an offer and see what happens.
Oh, really?
Shocking,
yeah.
Right? So what was so interesting is that at the end of the day, they rejected the offer, but they came back with a higher number, whatever it was, I can't remember. But then I think it was 2 weeks later, they ended up coming back because they had actually put an offer on a house in BC and they were going to lose that house if this house did not have a firm sale. And so I ended up getting the house for $100,000. So that was kind of cool. And again, wasn't like I was like, I'm going to negotiate. That's all I had. So it's, you know, I always tell people, like, we literally talk about this all the time. Write the damn offer. What's the worst you're going to hear? no. You hear no, you move on with life, who cares? Or you hear no, and then they come back to you later.
And that's the one.
Yeah, like all the time now. I mean, Alyssa writes how many offers a week, and
I should actually start keeping stats on that because it's a lot.
yeah. And then how many of them do you think, what percentage come back after the fact? Be it 2 months, 6 months, a year?
I bet you probably 30-40% are ones that I write on multiple times before I get the property.
Yeah,
multiple times.
Yeah, and these are a lot of on MLS.
Oh yeah. This is
Right?
MLS, yeah.
Yeah, so crazy. And it's goes back to having the right agents who are willing to put in the work and follow up and keep good, diligent records on what's happening with it.
I don't even leave it up to the agents anymore. I keep my own records in my office with my team, and it's literally, I have a watch list. I've offered, I have a negotiation chart, the ones that I'm actively offering. And it honestly, it's true. I just constantly, I circle back to the ones I'm watching a few weeks later, and I'm like, because it's funny, there's kind of trigger points for days on the market, in our market, right? Like you have to learn all this for each market, but in our market, there's definitely about that 50-60 day point, people start getting antsy or nervous. And then it's just like, I just keep writing.
So put it out there, make it happen. So I ended up getting the property, and it was a relatively quick possession. So I think between me looking at it and actually physically buying it, I think it was 4 weeks. So this was literally like me seeing a property, being like, oh, that's a cute house, and then literally living in it 30 days later. It moved pretty quick when it actually all came together. And then all of a sudden I had this 5-bedroom house, and I lived at home till I was 20. I literally moved into the first house because, again, in my brain, I was like, why would I pay somebody rent? If anything, I'd rather just pay my mom rent instead of paying somebody else's mortgage. That sounds stupid. And so then I was just like, oh, and that was my common sense, right? So I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've always liked the idea of making money, but I've always been able to run numbers. And I just was like, 1 and 1 equals 2. Why wouldn't I do that if I can? And so from there, it took me about a month to paint a few of the rooms and stuff like that. And then I had my first roommate. And then basically within, I think it was 3 months, I had all 4 rooms filled. And yeah, I lived like that for quite a few years, and then basically lived for free. And the crazy thing is, I also worked 80 hours a week because I had whatever, if it was a full-time and 2 part-time or 2 full-time jobs, whatever, I've always been like that. But I pissed away a lot of money. Like if I would have known, like say somebody would have given me Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 18 or 20, yeah. Right? My life, I know, would have been entirely different, because had I known what I know now,
the power of it.
Oh, for sure. I would have completely bought way more real estate. Mm-hmm. What is so interesting is that in 2008, our market spiked exponentially.
Yeah. The rest of the world's falling apart, and Saskatoon goes, meh, forget it. Don't worry about it. We're going to triple our housing prices.
So overnight, and I am not even exaggerating, overnight, the house I did very little to, except for aesthetically painting and minor things, went from being worth $100,000 to being worth $300,000, right? Again, people,
how do you like them apples?
Yeah. So people might say, well, oh my God, why didn't you have more properties? Or, oh, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, all that stuff. I'm just grateful that I had a property in a market that appreciated, because I was able to be active in there and partake in that active appreciation. So going forward, I actually refinanced my property, and I was able to, because I had a better paying job at that point, I was able to get new financing for $180,000 home equity line of credit, paid off my original mortgage, and then I proceeded to blow a lot more money on what I cannot even tell you, literally. So I traveled quite a bit, but like not that much, like in comparison. So at the end of the day, I always say, like, again, you don't know what you don't know. I like to buy stuff. I like to travel. I like to do what I want when I wanted. But it's ridiculous when I look back at how much I could have banked away, qualified for more properties, done all these things. Like, I could have been retired at 25. But again, you don't know what you don't know. So those are lessons, but I'm just trying to pass this on to you guys, where putting a plan together and figuring out what it is you want, and then actually putting the steps in place to get there is so important. Yeah. Because I was just kind of lost. My parents, again, my mom, she's an educator. She's not a financial guru at all. She knew what she knew. She knew to buy a house. She knew to get credit cards. She knew to make the minimum payments, to keep your good credit, to do this, to do that. I've always paid all my bills because, again, that's how we were raised. But I didn't know about rental properties and how you could leverage your equity to buy more assets and all these different things. I didn't know about businesses and all the write-offs and everything that comes with it. I didn't know that. So again, these are things we've learned throughout the years. So fast forward, blew a bunch of money. I ended up selling my property. I think it would have been...
When she blew that money, there was no hookers and blow involved.
No,
So
nothing like that. So I think I sold my property in 2010, I believe it was. And so from there, I sold my property because I was like, this is a great house for a family. It was a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, character home on the river. It wasn't going to appreciate higher than it already had because we'd already done that big lift. And so I was like, I don't need this house. When I was 20, I had bought it with the intention that I was going to have babies and it would be a great family home, all that stuff. Fast forward, I was like, I'm not having kids, let's be real. And so I was like, I don't need this big house. I am tired of living with people. I'm tired of sharing my kitchen and my bathrooms. I don't really like people all that much. I want out, right? So I ended up selling that property for $300,000, and then I paid off all the debt I had, and I had about $100,000 that came to me. And so from there, I gave my mom some money because she had paid for some stuff on my property to enhance it because she lived with me for a little while. She's like, well, you need a nice paved stone driveway. I was like, I really don't, but sure. She's like, I'll pay for it. I was like, oh my God. So I paid her back for that and whatever. And so then from there, I bought a new car. Not a new car, but a new to me car. So I think it was $30,000 or something. And I did that. And then I had some money in the bank. And I was like, well, I don't want to have another house. I already played that game. I've been paying a mortgage since I was 20. I'm done with this. And so I ended up renting a room from a couple. And I was $500 a month, everything in, which is exactly what my renters used to pay me. And I was like, it was easy. I had a room. I got rid of all my furniture, put my extra stuff in storage, and life was easy for a few months. Then I was like, you know what? I'm in this apprenticeship. I'm going to be stuck here for a few years. Ideally, I'd wanted to travel, but I was like, I'm stuck in this apprenticeship. Do I walk away? Do I stay? It was like this big, like all these life decisions. And so I decided, you know what? I committed to something. I'm going to stick it out for 4 years. I'm going to get my ticket. This is my life for the next little while. So then I was like, you know what? This is dumb. Why am I paying somebody else rent when I could be getting my own house and I could have a basement suite where the tenant is going to pay my mortgage and I'm pretty much living for free? Why do I have to be so logical sometimes? And then I decided to go house shopping again. So I called the realtor up who had helped me sell my other house, sell the house. Sorry. When I sold the other house, I went and found a new agent. So I called her up and I said, hey, I'm going to go look for a new house. Will you help me? She's like, yeah, for sure. So I went on MLS and I started looking at properties. And at this point in time, I had taken a big, huge pay cut, to get into the electrical apprenticeship. So I made $14 an hour on paper. Do you know what you can qualify for if you make $14 an hour on paper and you have no debt?
A hassle-free landlord house. We have them cheap enough.
Yeah, now I know. But I qualified for a $180,000 property. Again, this is after the boom in Saskatoon. So my options were either a condo, which no, or a house in the hood. And I'm talking Pleasant Hill hood, right? So I was like, oh gosh, I'm a West Side girl, but Pleasant Hill's its own beast. I don't know if I can live there. So I ended up finding 5 properties on MLS and we ended up going and looking at them. And I was looking for a little bit of a fixer upper because I wanted to be able to force the valuation on a property. So we started looking, and of course, most of these were rental properties and the tenants don't leave. When you're in the hood and you're showing a house that's a rental property, they don't leave. They sit there and watch you looking at the house. Awkward. So I was like, well, let's go look. So the agent was like, okay. So the first few, I was like, wow, this is a lot. Yeah, we're good. So we moved on and she's like, do you want to keep looking? And I was like, I need a freaking house, man. So we keep looking. And the one house, I was like, okay, the only thing missing from here is the body, like chalk outline for the body. Like it was like a murder scene. It was insane. Now it's really funny because we look at houses like this every day. But back then, again, your perspective is just different. Okay. So, and she was like very much an East Side realtor. So the fact that she was going with me to these little fit houses is kind of hilarious. So we end up looking at the 5th house. And by then I'd kind of given up all hope. I was like, man, I'm not living in the hood. This is not for me. So we ended up coming to this last house, and we walked in and I was like, oh my gosh, this is cute. Right. And what was ironic about it is it's exactly the same layout of the house that I grew up in. It was a very, very common build that they did back in the day in the 1912s to 1930s. And so, yeah, the only difference was this house was a 3-bedroom upstairs. The house I grew up in was a 2-bedroom. And so I was super at home. It had all original character, the original wood, the original stuff. The benefit is that they had already updated the kitchen, which was nice. And then I knew that I was just going to have to update the bathroom because it still had the clawfoot tub, no shower. And then there was room for an extra totally separate basement suite, which is what I had wanted because I was like, I got used to having the income coming in from the tenants, but I just didn't want to see anybody's faces anymore. I didn't want to share my kitchen, bathroom, laundry, none of that stuff. So this one would have been completely a separate unit. They had their own entryway. They had their own everything, bathroom, laundry room, everything. So I was like, okay, but it was just a shell of a basement suite. So I had to go in and do all the things. Plus there was this wicked old boiler heating system. It was an original coal one that they had converted to gas at some point, but it was like asbestos filled. It was like this big monster thing. And I was like, hey, that's not staying. So I knew that was going to cost me about 15 to 20 grand to upgrade. So again, I'd done my numbers. I knew what I could afford to pay. And I think the property was listed for 175, 170, whatever it was. And I was like, I don't really want to pay that. And so we offered on it. And I was trying to get it for 160. We offered and it didn't work. They just were like, no, we'll hold on to it. So I was like, okay. And it had been their family home. They had moved to the East Side and they had just rented this to some friends, which is why it was still in really good shape. So I was like, no, I don't want to pay 160. I'm out. So then this was, I think, on Friday. All weekend, I could not get this house on my brain. Could not get it out of my brain. So I was like, oh. So I came back on Monday and I said, can we try and get it for 165? That's the max. So we ended up tying it up and I ended up buying it and then moving in here. So fast forward another 8 months past this. And this is where I went away to electrical school. And again, everybody knows, or whoever, anybody who follows us or has watched these epic hours knows where the story goes. But this is where...
That's how I'm on her couch.
This is where I ended up meeting Alyssa. And then after school, she ended up coming and helping me build this basement suite in this house.
I followed her home.
Yeah. And then we spent that month together, and that's where the steps really started coming fast and furious. And yeah, so fast forward to now, or no, I'll get the middle part. So when we were starting Epic, right, Alyssa used her divorce settlement money to pay for our courses, where we learned how to do all the things with our real estate investing stuff. And of course, continue to still
learn all the things.
Yeah, and take more courses and keep doing all the things. But at the same time, we wanted to buy properties. We wanted to get Alyssa out of her parents' house. God bless them for keeping her that long. But she needed her own space. Needed her own space, so we needed to get her into a home, which we did.
A home.
And so from there, we ended up getting her there. And then we ended up getting our first rental property by being really creative. And yeah, it's just been like a lot of different things. And so, but we were able to do those because one, I pulled a second mortgage on my property. So I went to City Financial, I think, or something like that. One of those crazy places where they charge you crazy amounts of interest to get money. So again, I was like, we need this money. So I went and put a $25,000 second mortgage on my property. Yeah. And I think it was 19.99% interest. Crazy. But at that point in time, it made sense for us because you can't get blood from a stone. No one was really going to invest in us as a business because we were a real estate investing business. We didn't have real estate to put up. So what we're going to do, right? So that is what we ended up doing at that point in time. Yeah. And so we maxed out, I maxed out my credit cards. Alyssa still had maxed out her credit cards. We're going to deal with Alyssa's stuff in a couple months here. So she's going to have a very awesome, similar story too, which is something we have in the pipeline. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was all this debt that was incurred for the business. And so every month I obviously had more, I had to pay that second mortgage. I had to pay all my minimum payments on the credit cards. I had to pay all these things. And so that gets tiring after a while. And, but it's what we had to do. And so this whole time we've been paying this extra debt out of the money we pull from the business and all that stuff. And I was just like, I'm so tired of paying these stupid things because I don't like bills. So then I, fast forward all the time, whatever, which is fine. But then I was looking at this whole situation. So now I've got this property. I've been paying on this second mortgage for 7 years. I've been paying on my mortgage for 9 years, right? So obviously there was some equity happening by investing in this suite and doing the renovations that I did to the property that forced the valuation on the property up. So there was equity there. Right. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to run the numbers, see how much equity I'm on, or sitting on, pardon me. And again, I knew I couldn't refinance it. So I was like, hey, and I came to Alyssa and I said, what if I sell my house into the hassle-free landlord program? We'll run it as an Airbnb because it's way too nice to rent as a regular rental. And, then I'll take my funds, pay off my debt, and then I'll be able to invest, personally myself on different things. And Alyssa's like, yeah, man.
Why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
That's
right?
what we've been trained to do.
Exactly. So that's really where everything kind of came together. And this is why, I'm sure some people are tired of us talking about it, but I love the universe. When you put stuff into the universe and then magic just happens. So my game plan was to have all this tied up and sold by the time my mortgage was up, because I had a mortgage through MCAP, which is one of the B lenders or whatever. And they're so stupid. Okay. I don't know if you have a mortgage through MCAP, but dumb. So last year,
quite asinine to work with.
Oh my God. Like literally retarded, bad word, but it's like, ugh. Anyway, it was not cool. So at the end of the day, I had tried doing this last year. This has been my game plan, where I was trying to tie this all up last year. And so I had told them, I was like, hey, I'm selling my house in the next 2 months. So I'll just go into an open mortgage, please, when my mortgage was up for renewal, because I didn't know what was happening. So I just renewed for 1-year terms, because I know it's really expensive to break a mortgage term. So if you are thinking about refinancing or selling your property, or you don't know what's going to be happening in the next few months, make sure you keep that in mind. Don't lock yourself into a 5-year mortgage if you think things are going to be changing in your life before then, because mortgage payout penalties are usually not fun.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, this is whatever. So last year in October, when my mortgage was up, I said, I'm going to keep it open for a couple months. I'll just pay a little bit of a higher interest rate and I'll go from there. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. I was like, what do you mean I can't do that? Like, that's like customary in like the mortgage world. And they're like, no, we don't allow that. I was like, so what are my options? They're like, well, you have to lock in for a term. You either get a 6-month fix where you're going to have a payout penalty at a crazy high interest rate, or you can get a 1-year term. I was like, that's dumb. They're like, that's the way it is. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I locked in for a 1-year term, and I've been planning this and working on this throughout the year. So I was trying to literally line everything up, because it has to sell on the day your mortgage is up. Well, anybody who knows about bank financing or selling properties or getting all that stuff, like, what are the chances that something might not go wrong? You might not have to push possession by a week or change things. And they're like, that sounds like a you problem. So I was just putting everything out there that all this stuff would line up and everything would work out smoothly and go from there. But 2 months ago, I ended up getting my property appraised to know what valuation it would be, so we can start selling it into the hassle-free landlord program. So I get it appraised, we get the appraisal value, and then literally the next morning I get a phone call from one of our current investors who is gonna get their third, I think, hassle-free landlord house. And they're like, hey, we're looking for something between 240 to 250 and da 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 da. And I was like, have I got a house for you? And I literally pitched them my house, and they were like, done, sold, let's go. I was like, okay. And that was it. It was sold. So it was just really interesting, again, how when you put the steps together and you make things happen, things will pan out. And so, yeah, that's it. So I was able to pay off all of my debt, and now I am kind of sitting on my money and savings. I have an idea of what I want to do with it, but I'm just going to kind of wait for the next month here to see how that pans out. But pretty excited, and we'll see what happens from here. And some people have asked, where am I moving? So I had looked at my personal financial situation, knowing that I cannot qualify for another mortgage. And so again, talked to Alyssa, and I was like, hey, I'm not even here, like hardly ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, what if I just move into a hassle-free landlord house?
Best tenant you could want.
Right? You know the place is going to get taken care of. You know it's not going to get wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the business can pay the rent. So that's what happened. And so now I was able to cut my living expenses to really, really, really affordable. So that's where, you know, you just got to figure out what makes sense for you in your world, and then put the steps in place to make the fun stuff happen. So that is the story. So are there any questions? I might have bored some of you guys. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we will just keep chatting.
He's got one.
Oh, we got something.
There you go.
Anonymous asked, what was your biggest setback on your journey to being debt-free, and how did you handle it? For me, I wouldn't say it was necessarily the biggest setback per se, but I would just think that one of the lessons, it was just, you don't know what you don't know. So for me, if I would have known what I know now a lot sooner, gosh, would life financially be different?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at this becoming debt-free, it was a long time coming is the wrong term, but we were both fully invested. We knew it wasn't going to happen overnight to get to where this is happening now, because we were that dedicated to get there. I think that's the big thing you should take away, right? If you honestly want to get to that point of being debt-free, then educate. Reach out. I mean, Shar, she was on our episode last week. She's a prime example of someone that is just bubbling with information and more than willing to share it with people. And I don't even know if she charges much or if anything for that. And I mean, it's priceless information. She'll sit down with you. She'll look at all your stuff. She's not there to mock you. She's not there to judge you. She's there to give you a roadmap so that you can put it together and make yourself debt-free. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and the only way it happens is if you sit down and make those roadmaps, and then if you are going to stick to it.
And following it.
Yeah.
And going back to the basic budgeting, figuring out what your actual income is, and then what you're going to put that money towards every single month. So this whole time that I've been, you know, pulling whatever income I pull from the company, which again is marginal, but again, it's enough to basically pay all my debts. And then it was enough to, you know, put gas in the gas tank, food in my belly, and have a little bit of extra spending. But I really don't spend a lot of money. I'm pretty frugal. And so nowadays, again, it's that whole like kind of FIRE movement. I'm super behind that, financial independence, retire early. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's very interesting. But people do the FIRE movement differently. Some people will go into like almost living like they're poverty stricken to bring their expenses so low so that they can replace their income faster, pay off all their debts, go from there, which is fine. But again, for me, I was able to channel our business into being an asset for helping me become financially free, or sorry, debt free faster. Because when we can write off travel, because I'm always working, and we can write off gas because I'm always working, and write off, you know, business meals because most of them are business meetings. Like when you can incorporate stuff you were spending, and I love shopping. So I channeled that kind of, that love of it into staging our houses and Airbnbs. So I'm still spending money. It just happens to be that everything's a write-off, and I don't need to fill my house with extra stuff, right? So again, if you can channel your passions into getting something you get paid for, that's the magic, because it doesn't feel like work at that point. And that's another thing I think a lot of people miss, is you don't have to suffer through this whole journey. You can enjoy the journey. You just need to figure out what makes sense for you. Amanda, yay, so excited for you. Thank you. Same. No, I actually had a coaching call this morning with our coach, and she was like, how does it feel? And I just said, it feels so real. because we've been working so hard for so long. And, you know, this is just a milestone because we have so many bigger things to come. But honestly, it feels like it's been at least 7 years in the making, 8 years probably. And so it's been a big goal. And of course, when you reach any big goal,
I'm reaching an age where it feels fresh because I partially suffer from being senile, so it's all good.
you just live everything over again.
That's right.
So yeah, so for me, it's just, I'm just kind of just sitting with it and just seeing, you know, because it's just a different way of being, and it allows, you know, more capacity for other things, which is what I'm kind of the most excited about.
And I mean, for those of you who are watching and you're like, oh, this is really cool for you, it may not be exactly what you need to do, but I mean, if you know of someone that should watch this, share the link, share it with somebody so they can see it's a possibility. I mean, there's that gift and curse of the internet, right? There's so much information out there that it can also go the other direction where it's so much, it's overwhelming. And how do you figure out what you should or shouldn't do? Like I said, I would definitely recommend for, you know, making this happen for you, surround yourself with people who know more about money than you do. Okay. And I'm not talking about, for the most of us, our parents, definitely, they did what they know. And some parents know how to invest and some don't, right? So that's okay if they don't, but then you need to find people that do, right? And then find out like different strategies that are out there. And then also, can you do it, as Rochelle would say, a side hustle? And I mean, if you can, then do it. Find a product, that a company you can get behind so you can make where you live, what some of the things you're doing write-offs, right? There is no shame in that. And people poo-poo on that because they're jealous. I was gonna say jelly.
I was gonna say that. Jealous.
Yeah, I create words all the time too. It's a great gift. But honestly, they're just jealous because they don't have the strength, courage, or endeavor to like drive to go out and re-educate themselves on how to be better. Okay, so just ignore them, right? And honestly, those, I always get behind like people that have products that they're moving or whatever. If it's one I'm not interested in, I'm just honest. I just say, you know what, this isn't something I know I would use in my life. I don't have anything against the product, but I just know me, right? But I think it's fabulous that people go out there and they can get behind something and do better for themselves. And you see, honestly, for most of the ones I've ever been introduced to or whatever, you see a lot of women doing it. And so kudos to you guys out there that are doing these things, because you are making life better for you and your families. And like, as long as you're utilizing that to the full potential with the write-offs and stuff like that. So another one would be find an accountant that's out there, or someone that has bookkeeping knowledge that can tell you kind of little ins and outs of that stuff. Because man, when you start diving into that and you're like, I didn't know that's a tax write-off. What the, you know? And there are a lot of accountant people out there that don't know business write-offs and don't know. I remember being married back in the day, we had a farm. Again, a great way to write things off if you have a farm. And honestly, I remember going with my ex-husband to the accountant, and he's like, oh, don't worry about any of those expenses. And I'm looking going, okay, I don't know a lot about accounting, but I do know that expenses are a good thing. So anyways, and I told my ex, I said, you need to go to a different account. Well, we've been going to that. I don't care that your family has seen this accountant for 47 years, okay? You should get a second opinion. He did, and you know what? He got a return for, I think it was like $3,800. He's like, I've never had a return like that before. And I went, told ya. So, you know, and then he, all of a sudden, it was a thing. He would actually, you know, receipts he would keep. And it's like, well, I'm using this in the shop. That's a write-off, right? Like, so again, he did take my advice at that point, and he did go seek out someone that was going to be able to help him. I think that's another one that people, you know, they go, even like accountants, doctors, the bank, they go see that one person and go, okay, well, that's it, right? Get a second or third opinion. It does not hurt to talk to someone about that same item with someone else to get a different perspective.
Yeah. Or ask others who are in similar boats what they do.
Yeah.
And whether you talk to their person or they give you a tip, like case in point, that's how we came up with the ninja strategy.
Mhm.
We didn't create it.
Mm-mm.
I was literally talking to an investor out of Manitoba, and he never did invest with us. He was a very active investor, and I was trying to pitch him for our, before we named it and coined it Fund to Flip, our, private investing or private whatever side of the company. And he's like, okay. He's like, yeah, you sound pretty smart. You sound like you know what you're doing. I'm like, oh, okay.
Thanks.
And yeah, thanks for that. And then he's like, hey, can I give you a nugget? And I was like, I like nuggets. And so he basically was talking about, he's like, have you ever thought about paying somebody a lesser return in a taxable situation and then paying a higher return in a tax-free situation? I was like, whoa. Like,
yeah.
And, I'm pretty good with numbers and I'm pretty resourceful, and I totally missed that. Right. So again, we were like, holy cow, we went to listen. She's like, what? And I was like, right. And so we made it a big, huge part of our company. So again, like we're not saying we created all this stuff, but it's just figuring out how you can make it your own and put your own stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've done.
And it's just being the one that's willing to also educate too, right? On our side of it, it's worked for us in our company because we're willing with our team to put the time into educating others.
Yeah, showing them there's a different way. So.
And I mean, for budgeting and all the things, there's so many books out there. There's so many resources. Last resource though, don't go to the bank for advice on how to save, on how to be debt free. Don't do it, please. I'm begging you. I'm asking you nicely.
Yeah,
if I see you off of this screen, it won't be so nice.
Don't put your money in an account and get 0.5% or maybe 1%. That just doesn't make sense. But at the end of the day, you know what? And this was my big thing before. When you don't have enough money to basically get ahead, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But how could you pay off maybe your smallest debt, where then you can take that monthly payment and put it on your next debt? And then from there, once that's paid off, it's a compound effect, right? So you just got to make sense for whatever works for you and know your capacities. Comment from Monique. Great advice. I enjoyed your word choices during this episode. I laughed hard a few times. Attitude is everything. Action is everything. Awesome. Glad you enjoyed. So so that's what I always say. Figure out where you're at and then just make it all happen.
Regardless, none of this is going to happen. No one is going to do it for you unless you take an action step. So it's great if you go seeking information. Information is only a portion of the whole battle. You need to take the information and put it to action. That is what empowerment is. That is it right there. That is the math formula. That's the secret pill to success. There you go. That's it.
And one more nugget is be careful. Be careful who you are spending your time with. And be careful who you are listening to. Mm-hmm. And when I look at my previous life of when I was spending a lot of money and just really doing what I want when I wanted and not investing for the future and not investing in assets and not getting ahead, right? Again, I had my house. I understood the power of real estate because I was able to experience it really young. So for me, I understand. I love real estate because of that. And now I've made profit on 2 properties that I lived in, right? So I know there's power behind that. And I know there's ways that you could, potentially invest better and all that kind of stuff. And this is why we created the programs we did with the Fund to Flip and the Hassle-Free Landlord program, because we were like, not everybody has the time to go out and do all the things, but lots of people have equity or underperforming invested funds or cash that they can put to work, and we and our team can do all the things, right? And then at that point, it's partnership. We can all benefit. It's win-win. So, but when I lived in my former life, I hung out with spendaholics. I hung out with people who would just be like, hey, want to go to Vegas tomorrow? Sure, let's go, right? And as much as that's fun, that does not, if you don't budget for that, you don't actually figure out how much you're going to allocate, and you just, swipe that credit card till it don't go anymore. Like, that's not good. That's not good. But that was like second nature at that point. And why was I buying all this stuff? Like, I didn't need more things. I had lots of things. And so again, it goes back to figuring out and working on yourself. Because at that point in time, I did not know who I really was as a person. There was a lot of, turmoil and trauma that I have not worked through. Like, again, we all have our stories, we all have our shit. But if you're not going to go and do the work to figure out who you are and what makes you happy, and you're just going to buy things because you think that's going to make you happier or whatever, then that's not going to get you further ahead. So for myself, again, through the years, I have done the work. I have, again, we're all works in progress. There's still more work to be done, but I am not the same human I was 10 years ago. And I'm not going to be the same person today that I will be in 10 years. And if I am, then I just wasted an entire decade. And that would be very, very, like, that'd be probably the worst thing that could have ever happened. And yeah, so don't waste who your opportunities are, or what you are, or what your potential is, by not doing the work, because the time passes, guys.
Sure does.
Yeah. Do we have any other comments or anything? I think we're
out of time.
We're getting
Just
there.
about,
We're
yeah.
like 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
this house is not really ready yet. I'm still living in it. It's still kind of messy. So I don't know if we should do a tour or not.
Why not?
Okay, we'll do a quick tour. And yeah, so up here, yeah, I can show you what I did throughout the years on the renovation kind of thing, whatever. So just gotta unplug it. Okay, so we'll see. Let's see. Yeah. So this is the entryway when you walk in. So this is my guest room. This is a very, very bright room. I painted it yellow to make it really cheery, but you can see all the original woodwork like up on the trim there. And then I've got the original hardwood floors, all the wood doors, and look at all these little cute handles and all the character stuff. I don't like antiques, but it was here and it worked. So we went from there. And then here is where they kind of made this more of an open concept feel. So you can see the team is in here. Say hi, everybody. And then my niece English is here too. She stayed with me overnight. So
You're famous now.
yeah. So in here, they obviously at some point blew out this cutout for the kitchen. And so they made that kind of open concept dish, and then they put in a new kitchen. But yeah, you can see all the original trim for the windows. They're all original windows. Oh, I got
like these.
Yeah, they're there. The boiler heating, so you can see the old school rads there. All that fun stuff. And so, yeah, so I've started downsizing some stuff in here. I've got a lot of stuff in boxes that still has to go to the next house. Then here's the kitchen. Again, I got stuff everywhere, but they had put in an IKEA kitchen before I bought it. And I just put in stainless steel appliances and it's all good to go. They did this like island thingy here. It's all full of stuff right now. But yeah, and then it gives you that clear peekaboo through, kind of makes it feel more open concept. Oh, what do we got?
We got, okay, great backstory. Sounds like you were born to hustle and get what you want at an early age. What changed in 2008 that caused the prices to spike? Do you think that will happen again? Okay, so I'll answer this one. So in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, the bubble of 2008, oh, look at me, I'm cut off there. I can just see the best part of me in my mouth. What happened with the housing was there was multiple things that kind of occurred. One, I wasn't kidding. I was barely joking when I said our housing prices were about 1950. So what happened is the area kind of realized, holy, like our housing prices were not keeping up with the rest of the country. We're one of those places. And so there's people out there called speculators. So that was one phenomenon where they're investors and they just literally scour places in the world for housing where they go, there's no way a city of 300,000 people should be selling houses for that price point. So that happened. Then we had mass products, infrastructure being done in the province. So the mines were all expanding and doing things and all the things. So then housing became a massive shortage. And then thirdly, at the time, Alberta and other places in Canada were going through a massive recession. Okay, so it was this big draw because there was jobs, and it was this big draw because it was cheap to live here. And so all of these things kind of hit at one time. There was also a few other variables, but those would be the key ones that happened that literally caused in 6 months, like I could tell stories for hours of like the horror stories of people buying houses sight unseen and all that kind of stuff. It was wild. So yeah, that's what that is. All right, back to the regular scheduled program.
Okay, so then we've got a second bedroom here. So this is my bedroom. I like a little drama, so I got this crazy chandelier and all that stuff. So that's pretty much it. And then this is the bathroom. I completely gutted this and put it back together. Because like I said before, when I bought it, they only had a clawfoot tub and no shower. So I was like, that's not going to work. So did that. Small bathroom, but it works. And then here was actually the third bedroom. And for myself, I was like, I don't need a third bedroom because I just need me in a guest bedroom. So I actually put laundry up here so it could be completely separate from the basement suite. And I actually did a walk-in closet. So again, lots of stuff. And what's crazy is I really don't buy a lot of stuff. This is actually stuff I've had for a long time. And yeah, so that's it. So we'll go back to, sorry, if you want to switch spots. We'll go back to that. And then we've already done another Epic Hour where we toured the basement suite, which is a 1-bedroom separate contained suite there. And then that's the door to get down there, but I don't use that. Oh, it did not. Okay, so this is the actual original. I don't know if you guys can see it with the glare or whatever, but I can't move it. Okay, there we go. You can see it a little bit. But that's the original character we had drawn when we were in Vegas on a trip. So that is the original one. And we just had that modified to be our Epic Alliance character. So. Yeah, we'll have to bring it to the office one of these days. So I just haven't moved it.
So it's time to say adieu and time to go. But before we go, the next episode is Thursday, October 29th. It's 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and guess what? Noon Sasky time.
And Bailey and I are going to be on the road. So we will come from a different, we're going to like, I don't know, zoom in or something like that. So we'll be in 2 different locations, but we're still going to do the Epic Hour.
So we can be at home in my house. Go.
You do. And then, yeah, so it'll be interesting because who knows where we're going to be coming to you from. So also a quick shout out, if anybody is out in Ontario-esque area and you want to meet up, let us know because Bailey and I will be meeting with people. So if you either invest with us or are interested in investing with us, reach out. Who do we email Bailey@epicalliance.ca if you want to book a meeting with us because she'll do the calendar. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Hope you got some entertainment or education or nuggets from this, and we will wait to see you next time on next week's episode of the Epic Hour. So thank you.
Stay epic.
Have a good one.